I made a scrap wood storage cart out of a single sheet of plywood, and then added some extras to it for even more storage. The plans for this I found on Instructables, and they're really good plans. And so most of what you'll need for the construction is on those plans. I'll link the plans in the description to the video. I will show you a couple of things on the construction that might have tripped me up a little bit. But I'll explain those to you. It's actually pretty easy. And then I'll also show you how to add these extras for a little bit more storage, both on the front and on the back of the cart. The plans lay out the cuts on the single sheet of plywood. The instructions say to make the cuts in alphabetical order. I think that's more or less right, but as I see it, you make 3 cuts on the full width of the 4x8 sheet of plywood. You want to make the cuts successively and measure them after each cut. You don't want to measure all 3 cuts before you do the first cut. Do the first cut, then measure the second cut, then do the second cut, and measure the third cut. The reason for that is the designer did not account for saw blade kerfs in telling you the width of the cuts. So you end up at the end of making these 3 cuts with the 4th piece being a little bit shorter than what is listed on the design sheet. But that's on purpose. The designer did it that way. It's not a flaw. Once you've made those 3 full width cuts, you can go and cut the smaller pieces by following in the alphabetical order. I've just used a Sharpie to label each of the pieces. It was convenient to use the track saw for most of these cuts, but I made a few cuts on the table saw as well. One of the parts, it's part G on the plans, has a bevel cut. The plans don't show what angle that is, and I wanted to use my miter gauge for it, so I measured it. It turns out to be 54 degrees, and you can use that setting to cut it on your miter gauge. I did the assembly with glue and screws. They're just butt joints, nothing fancy at all. I did pre-drill the holes. I think that's important so you don't split the plywood. I used 1 3/4 inch screws, but you could use 1 5/8 as well. The first components to assemble are the sides and the back, and after that there are some internal dividers. There are 2 full-width internal dividers, and each of those full-width dividers has some smaller, just kind of 5-inch subdividers. You will get stuck if you don't assemble these in the right order. The shorter 5-inch dividers need to be attached to the full-width dividers before the full-width dividers are assembled into the cart. If you tried to reverse that order by putting the full width dividers in before installing the subdividers, you'd have a problem. There would not be enough clearance in the box to drive the screws for the subdividers. For what it's worth, I don't think the instructions are entirely clear on this point, but you can see I've got those subdividers all assembled before I put the full width dividers into the box. I had a set of casters just sitting in one of my drawers, so I just used those. There you have the 1-sheet scrap cart, but I still have my extras to add. Before I built the scrap cart, my scrap collection was just kind of a messy pile, more or less in some plastic boxes. So I'm just going through it, one pile is just to throw away, and the other decent pieces I'm putting in the scrap cart. This is as far as the Instructable project went. And I've got a bunch of my scraps in there, that's great. I've got a couple of boxes of scraps here I'm just gonna throw away, so that's great. What's not great is I've got some shorter pieces that I really wanna keep because some of them are nicer wood. They won't really go in here, the bins are too deep, they're just gonna get lost in the bottom of these bins. So I'm gonna add a shallow set of bins to the front of it. I'm gonna use some scrap wood to make that. And then in the back, I'm just gonna take advantage of the fact that this is designed with this little extra shelf back here. Again, I'm gonna just add a piece of wood here and add a little bracket back here so some bigger pieces can go in the back. The front bin will rest on a cleat. I think it's a piece of 2x2, so I'm just taking a measurement here so I can cut that on the table saw. This shows the shelf bottom attached to that cleat, and now I'm attaching some little internal dividers to the shelf bottom. I'm just going to use glue and nails for that. It is very handy to have an air nailer right at the assembly table. I'm using glue and nails to attach the front of the bin to the bottom and to those internal dividers. The cleat that supports the front bin will be held on with glue and screws. I've already pre-drilled it for my screw holes. By the way, I'm not giving any dimensions for this extra because it really just depends on what scrap wood you have. You know, I just pulled some stuff out of the scrap bin to make these extra parts for it. The screws and glue are pretty good support for that front bin, but I also added just some supports on the side, just with some side pieces. Those went on with glue and nails, and I think it's plenty strong. I mean, it's not coming off there. For the extra storage on the back, I've cut some blocks to the width of that little shelf that sticks out. Those are going on with glue and screws. And then I've just got a simple board cut to be attached to that. Again, I think I used glue and screws on this, or did I use nails? I used screws. The upper bracket is just a piece of scrap wood attached to the same size blocks that I used on the bottom. So now I can fit longer pieces, and they're supported by that bracket. When I loaded the cart, I probably threw away half of my scrap wood. Wouldn't fit in the cart, and I just threw away the stuff that was kind of the crummier pieces of scrap wood, and kept the better pieces. So a good project from that standpoint too. It sort of forced me to get a little bit more organized. And now that I have this cart, even though I have less scrap wood overall, I'm much more likely to find a useful piece of scrap wood, because I can see what I've got and sort through it pretty easily. Anyways, hope you enjoyed this. If you liked the video, please hit the like button. I would welcome a subscription to my channel. It's got woodworking stuff. There's also ranch lifestyle stuff on my channel. Things like, how do we deal with snow removal? What are we doing with the horses and the cows and so on up here at our ranch at 7,000 feet in the Colorado Rockies. Anyways, thanks again for watching. Bye.